There's a saying they whisper in old money towns: bright hedges hide dark houses. Greenwich, Connecticut had both. Mile-long stone walls veined with ivy, hedges clipped like the edges of dollar bills, Bentleys rolling past guard shacks where the guards already knew the plate numbers by heart. On Parsonage Road, beyond a set of wrought-iron gates that cost more than a starter home, stood Hawthorne Hall, 28,000 square feet of white limestone and glass, 4 stories, 9 fireplaces, and a music room that never heard a lullaby. Everyone in town adored the Hawkins name. Harper Hawkins, real estate magnate, donor, Sunday front row, the kind of man whose handshake made mayors forget campaign promises. His charitable gala, the Hawthorne Harvest, had its own dress code and its own gossip column. He loved being adored. He loved it most when the cameras stayed for the photo and left before the truth. On a crisp Monday in late September, a woman who looked like no one of consequence stepped off a Route 522 local bus at the end of the lane. She carried a cheap nylon tote, a folded letter, and a mop that had seen better years. Her thrift store sneakers were grey and clean, laces doubled. The scarf tied under her chin shaded a face lined with time. She walked toward the service gate, where the intercom was mounted just high enough to make her reach. The speaker crackled. "Antonella! Antonella Shelton," she said in a voice softened by New England winters and long boardrooms. "I'm here for the housekeeping job." There was a pause as a camera lens zipped and focused. The gate clicked open. If the Greenwich press had been there, they would have missed the headline: "The wealthiest mother in 3 counties, stepping into a stranger's kitchen with a bottle of glass cleaner in her tote." Antonella Shelton, 58, widow, majority shareholder of Shelton and Wallace Holdings, had 12 board seats, 2 private art advisors, and 1 son who made the cover of Forbes at 30. Drake Wallace, a man who could sign off 8 figures before lunch and spend the afternoon counseling a startup founder who still wore a college ring. Drake would be at Hawthorne Hall tomorrow to finalize a joint venture with Hawkins Properties, $620 million in mixed-use waterfront, tax incentives locked, ribbon already ordered. It was the deal the town would toast and the papers would sanctify. It was also the perfect stage, because somewhere inside Hawthorne Hall, someone had been positioned for Drake's attention. Someone the Hawkins machine wanted aligned with their legacy. A good fit, a refined temperament. Words that had nothing to do with mercy. Antonella didn't come to be charmed. She came to see who would be kind when no one important was watching. Moshe grinned. "You'll fit right in, or run real fast. Lunch is at 12:30, if the girls haven't started their juice cleanse by then." "The girls? You'll meet them," he said, and slid a tray of lemon bars into a walk-in that smelled like summer in a bowl. By 10, Antonella had a rolling cart, a caddy with neutral pH sprays that cost $40 a bottle, and a schedule printed by the estate manager, Lionel Lozano. He met her at the elevator, tall, careful, the kind of man who arranged a room with his eyes before he touched a thing. Miss Shelton, the service corridor smelled of lemon oil and money. At the end of it stood a man in a navy blazer with a clipboard and the posture of a former Marine. "Victor Duffy," he introduced himself without smiling. "Head of security. ID." She offered the letter, typed on Hawkins' letterhead, along with a state ID that listed a modest Stamford apartment she didn't live in. Victor checked both, glanced at the mop, then at her steady eyes. "Rules are simple. Enter through this door. Staff dining is downstairs. No phones in public rooms. We're a no-drama house." "No drama," Antonella said, almost kindly. "I've had enough for a lifetime." The staff wing unfurled like a less glamorous mirror of the mansion. Narrower halls, lower ceilings, a clock that ticked loud because nobody noticed it until the end of a long shift. In the kitchen, a tall man with a sleeve of tattoos and a white apron patted dough with the reverence of a prayer. "Moshe Bautista," he said, wiping his hands and offering a forearm shake. "Executive chef, don't let the artichokes scare you. They're all bark." "Antonella," she replied, "I don't scare easy." "Good, Antonella is fine." "Antonella," Lionel nodded, "you'll start on mezzanine, bedrooms 2 through 5, change linens, dust, avoid closets. If you break something, tell me, not them." He studied her once more, the way good managers do, when something doesn't fit, but also doesn't set off alarms. "You've done this before." A young woman stood on a chair, retacking a loose curtain hook with the caution of someone who understood gravity too well. "Careful," Antonella said, stepping in. "I can do that." The girl, startled, turned, and in the small moment when she regained the chair and her balance, Antonella saw a kind of quiet the others didn't have. Not resignation, not fear, something sturdier. A Midwestern sky inside a person. "Ariana Fletcher," she said, climbing down and offering a hand. "I should have asked Lionel to send maintenance. Old habit, fix it yourself before it becomes a problem." "Antonella." The older woman shook her hand. It was warm, steady. "Your room is the only one that breathes." Ariana smiled like someone who didn't hear that kind of sentence often. "I like windows open. The house smells like lilies and glass cleaner when it's shut. What's your schedule?" "Mezzanine today, floors tomorrow, windows after the gala if the weather holds." Ariana reached for the sheets set on the cart. "Let me help." "You don't have to." "I do." She meant it. She lifted the mattress, tucked the corner, and did not rush the work. "Moshe makes too much food at lunch. He'll pretend he made the extra for someone else, but it's for us. You can split my salad." "Deal," Antonella said, and felt something unclench between her ribs. The morning unspooled. In a hallway niche, a bronze horse watched her with blank eyes. Somewhere downstairs, a Steinway ran scales without music. Victor's voice murmured on a radio. Lionel's email chimed like a metronome. Near noon, the air changed, the house's way of bracing when the man of the house came home. Harper Hawkins's shoes were brown and quiet, his haircut precise, his cologne calibrated for boardrooms and pews. He was on the phone before the door latched. "Drake arrives at 10 tomorrow, he told Victor. "Prep the study. Clear the family wing for the afternoon. No interruptions. I want the terms settled by lunch and the cameras out by 4. "Understood," Victor said. Harper's gaze slid past Antonella like she was part of the wallpaper. "Who's this?" "New temp," Victor said. "Antonella Shelton." "Shelton," Harper repeated, smiling without warmth. "Good name. Hope you're better than the last one." She cried when a vase fell. "I don't cry for vases," Antonella said. "Only for people." Harper blinked as if a painting had spoken. Then he moved on, waving his hand like a director cutting a scene. In the kitchen, the lunch rush rolled like a tide. Moshe plated roast chicken with lemon and thyme, a grain salad with pistachios, and a tray of simple grilled peaches that could make a person forgive a hard morning. Staff ate at the long stainless table. 10 minutes, no phones. Antonella took a corner spot, spooned modestly, and watched the room without seeming to. Lionel set a plate by her elbow. "Eat more," he said. "First days steal your sugar." Ariana appeared with a glass of iced tea and an apology she didn't owe. "They moved my library shift," she told Moshe. "I can still help you prep if you need me." "You always help me," Moshe said, sliding her an extra peach. "Don't tell the others." Ariana laughed softly and split the peach, setting half on Antonella's plate without ceremony. "Try this. Tastes like July." Antonella tasted it. Sweetness, a little smoke, juice the color of late afternoon. "Thank you." "Of course," Ariana said, and went on with her 10 minutes, like someone who had learned exactly how much kindness she could afford before anyone would call it a weakness. Upstairs after lunch, the house put on its second face. Perfume bloomed. Cece's laughter sharpened. Addie practiced a smile you could see from a donor table. Lionel set fresh water in the study. Victor checked every camera angle in the hallway. Tomorrow would be a ballet with expensive shoes and a conductor who could pull a fortune out of a dotted line. Antonella rolled her cart into a sunroom that looked over 15 acres of lawn clipped tight as a crew cut. She washed windows from the side, never stepping in front of the glass, the way old staff had taught her. Never photograph yourself by accident in someone else's life. On the far side of the room, a phone chimed. Ariana slipped in quietly, carrying a basket of folded towels. Her shoes were flats, scuffed at the toes, clean at the heel. She set the basket down and reached for the door latch with the same tender caution she'd used for the curtain hook. "Let me," Antonella said, setting her squeegee aside. She opened the door, held it as Ariana balanced the basket on her hip. "You do more than your share." Ariana shrugged, the kind of shrug that protects a person. "Everyone does what they can." "Do they?" "Some do what they like," she said, and her mouth tilted like she'd just told herself the truth again. Down the hall, voices rose, the lilting pitch that meant the sisters were gathered. Cece's tone carried a sugared edge. "Ariana, darling, the study needs water glasses. Sparkling, not still. The bubbles look festive." "On my way," Ariana called, already moving. Addie appeared in the doorway, phone poised. "And polish the tray," she added. We're hosting a man who could buy this wing and turn it into a shoe closet. Let's not look thrift." Antonella watched Ariana nod, accept, pivot, no eye roll, no flinch. She lifted the basket again, and a towel slid off the top. Antonella caught it, folded it in one clean slip, and tucked it back without comment. In the pantry, the stainless tray reflected the room like a lake. Ariana spritzed, wiped, inspected the care she gave to other people's reflection. Antonella stood beside her, drying the edges. "Do you like it here?" the older woman asked, too gently to be nosy. Ariana stared at the faint ghost of a fingerprint until it vanished. "It's a roof," she said. "A roof is something. And the people under it." Ariana paused. The truth pressed against her teeth and changed shape before it left. "Some are kind," she said finally. "Leon, Moshe, Victor, when no one is watching. Harper on Sundays when a camera is near. The rest, we all have our weather." Antonella thought about weather, about storms that move fast and storms that sit on a town until the roofs rot. She thought about her son, about the way he read rooms like stock tickers and still missed the single person who brought him soup when he stayed too late. From somewhere deep in the house, a grandfather clock tolled 2. A rehearsal began, heels on marble, a laugh practiced in the mirror, the prelude to a performance Antonella had seen in 3 countries and 6 charities. She'd come to recognize cruelty that wore couture. In the staff corridor, Victor stood with a clipboard and the weight of tomorrow stacked like lead on the lines of his face. He nodded once at Antonella, an acknowledgement of competence, of presence, of someone who knew how to move in a house without scuffing it. "Tomorrow at 10, he said, not to her in particular, but to the air, as if the marble could carry instructions to the ones who needed them. Antonella returned to the mezzanine, to a hallway where the light was flattering and the floors didn't squeak. She pulled a microfiber cloth over the gold leaf of a frame and saw, for a split second, her own eyes reflected, steady, watchful, braver than the scarf made her look. There was work to do tonight, lists to finish, corners to test, grace to notice. Tomorrow, the town's favorite son would walk into this house, and the cameras would mistake the shiniest thing for the truest. Tomorrow, the mansion would smile for the public. Today, Antonella swept where the light didn't reach and listened for the sound a heart makes when it's hungry. She found it in a small room with a patched quilt and a St. Christopher medal, in a kitchen where a peach got cut in half without a speech, in the way a young woman said, "Let me help," and meant it. "Bright hedges hide dark houses," the town liked to say. Antonella had learned one more line to that old wisdom. Dark houses still have windows. You just have to stand very still to see who opens them. She squeezed the mop head, twisted out the last of the water, and looked down the length of the hallway that would be polished to a mirror by morning. Her hands were already sore. Her purpose felt clean. And somewhere a few miles away, in a glass-walled office that looked out over the Sound, Drake Wallace tapped the signature page of a contract, told his assistant to book a car to Parsonage Road, and wondered why, for the first time in a very long time, business felt like a prelude instead of the main event. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses breed their own weather. By Tuesday morning, Hawthorne Hall was overcast with perfume and plans. The sisters woke early, not to pray or study, but to rehearse. The language of influence needed daily practice, angles to camera, tone to staff, laughter that rang like coins in a silver bowl. Cecilia Wilkinson posted her first video of the day at 7:11 a.m. Voice honeyed, robe cinched, the ring light set to golden. "Morning angels," she cooed, "your day will rise to meet your standards." She placed a hand over a bottle of collagen powder with a brand deal behind it. Linked below. Addison Sparks pushed through the family gym with a personal trainer named Rowan, counting reps, the camera mounted low to lengthen her legs. "Discipline," she said between shallow breaths, "non-negotiable." Off camera she'd arrive at breakfast late and winded, then pass her toast to the dog. Antonella had seen dozens of versions of them, the cultivated, the curated, the carefully careless. She wheeled her cart into the breakfast room at 7:30 sharp. Sun shaved a bright line across the long oak table. Moshe set down a platter of soft scrambled eggs with chives, a bowl of berries that looked like jewels, and a tower of brioche rolls shiny with egg wash. Cece glided in first, phone up, gloss perfect. We do family breakfast, she told 400,000 followers, claiming a seat at the head as if she paid the property taxes. It keeps our hearts aligned. Your father's seat, Lionel said gently from the doorway. Cece pivoted to the right like a ballerina, avoiding a bump. Of course, the broadcast continued. Gratitude list, warm bread, strong coffee, meaningful deals. Addie breezed in and sat, thumb flying. What's the Wi-Fi? The same as yesterday, Moshe said, placing a small porcelain pitcher of maple syrup by the brioche. Vermont, grade A amber, don't waste it. Noted, Addie said, then poured half over a single roll and left the other half to cool into sugar glass. A third voice drifted from the hallway, soft, purposeful. Ariana moved in with a stack of linen napkins, each folded with a small flourish she learned from a library book on etiquette, because the house had rules for polish, but not for warmth. She laid a napkin beside each plate without a sound. Careful, Cece said, still filming. No fingerprints on the silver. Followers notice details. We do excellence. Ariana nodded, stepped back, and was already reaching for the next task. Her coffee would come later in a paper cup in the staff hall, cooled and sipped standing up. Harper arrived last, shoes quiet, attention on a briefing folder. He kissed the tops of his daughters' heads without looking at their faces. Lionel, we're set for the 2 o'clock walkthrough. Study is staged, contracts print at 11, florist at noon, media at 4, Lionel replied. Good, and the guest suites, turned down and dusted. Harper finally noticed Antonella at the sideboard, polishing the coffee urn spout until it reflected the room like a mirror. The new temp, he said, as if reminding himself she existed. Keep the service entrance clear. We'll have trucks. Yes, sir, Antonella murmured. He moved on, sat at the head, and let Cece slide a cup of coffee into the frame of her video. Careful, Cece said, still filming. No fingerprints on the silver. Followers notice details. We do excellence. Ariana nodded, stepped back, and was already reaching for the next task. Her coffee would come later in a paper cup in the staff hall, cooled and sipped standing up. Harper arrived last, shoes quiet, attention on a briefing folder. He kissed the tops of his daughters' heads without looking at their faces. Lionel, we're set for the 2 o'clock walkthrough. Study is staged, contracts print at 11, florist at noon, media at 4, Lionel replied. Good, and the guest suites, turned down and dusted. Harper finally noticed Antonella at the sideboard, polishing the coffee urn spout until it reflected the room like a mirror. The new temp, he said, as if reminding himself she existed. Keep the service entrance clear. We'll have trucks. Yes, sir, Antonella murmured. Addie raised her phone. Look at this, angels, heritage. We don't just live well, we honor the craftsmanship of... A tiny tick under Ariana's thumb spoke of an old crack. She felt it, adjusted pressure, eased the plate onto the table with a grace that didn't make the cut of Addie's video. The second plate followed, perfect. The third slid toward the edge in a whisper of porcelain against wood. Cece's eyes brightened like a cat's tracking a string. Careful, she sang. Ariana drew in a breath no one saw. The plate steadied, settled, safe. Cece pouted. Almost a moment, she murmured to her followers, but excellence prevailed. Her fans commented with fire emojis and hearts. Nobody asked what excellence cost when it was demanded in rooms that did not pay for your dentist. Breakfast ended with the screech of chair legs. Cece took her ring light down the hall for a closet tour. Addie practiced a laugh in front of a mirror, then put on a dress with a zipper she couldn't reach. She shouted Ariana's name instead of using the call bell, because being overheard was a kind of power. That was the seamstress, Lionel interjected, tone mild, authority plain. Addie shrugged, details blur, not to the person blamed, Antonella said under her breath, but the sisters weren't tuned to that frequency. Ariana collected the steamer, checked the water level, and carried it like a pail through the hall. On the mezzanine, she set the emerald dress on a form and worked the wand in slow downward strokes. Steam rose in small ghosts. She smoothed each dart, each curve. She looked like a girl comforting something wild that might run if handled wrong. Cece appeared in the doorway with a camera, framed the steam like a halo. Behind the scenes with the angels who make magic, she narrated. We're all a team here. Ariana kept steaming, didn't turn. She knew the rule, look at clothes, not lenses. When Cece cut the clip, her smile loosened. Don't go too slow, steam spots show. I'm watching, Ariana said. Good, Cece replied, then glanced at Antonella in the hall, like a cat noticing a mouse. New staff, she observed. What's your name again? Antonella. You from around here? Stamford, Antonella said. Truth enough. My son works in the city. Everyone's son works in the city, Cece said with a laugh that meant the conversation was over. By noon, the house's appetite for attention needed a meal. The sisters called for salads, then sent them back for being too dressed, then called for ice, then forgot the ice and asked for rosé. Moshi built a sandwich and set it where Ariana would accidentally find it. Turkey on sourdough, lettuce crisp, one perfect tomato slice with a pinch of salt. She paused by the staff counter, saw the plate waiting, blinked once like someone who'd just been remembered, and ate standing up in 4 careful bites between tasks. Antonella dried glassware beside her and split her own apple without words. They shared the kind of silence that breeds trust. Humiliation found the house after lunch the way fog finds a bay. It started with a simple task, loading centerpiece vases onto a rolling cart for the florist to fill later. The vases were heavy, hand-blown, thick-lipped, taller than a bottle of Bordeaux. Lionel asked for 2 staff to move them. Ariana arrived first. I'll get a second, she said, reaching for a crate. No need, Cece said, sweeping in, filming. You're strong, darling. Ariana shifted under the weight. The vase wobbled. Not much, just enough. Antonella stepped forward. Let me. Cece lifted her phone higher, angling to capture the near miss. Careful, she purred, tone warmed for the camera. We believe in excellence. Ariana settled the vase on the cart, breath measured. Addie pouted at the lens. Accidents happen, she told her followers. We're resilient. In the powder room, water ran clear over Ariana's cut. Antonella held out a band-aid she'd tucked into her apron pocket that morning, because houses like this never stocked what was actually needed. Press, she instructed, and Ariana did. Eyes lowered, shoulders squared. Thank you, the younger woman said after a beat. Keep your hands, Antonella replied. They carry more than trays. At 2, the florist came with 3 assistants and enough roses to make a chapel blush. At 3, the AV crew arrived to test mics in the study. At 4, Harper's PR team, Leonard Martinez, sharp suit, sharper eyes, swept in with a run of show that read like a military op. Angles, Leonard told the cameraman, pointing at the coffered ceiling. Close on signatures, pull back on the handshake, keep the sisters in frame for 2 beats, then swing to Mr. Hawkins. We sell family, not just deal flow. Tomorrow, Victor repeated at his station, tapping the event plan with a pen. Tomorrow. The sisters floated and flitted and helped where the light was best. They corrected table cards that didn't need correcting, placed a hand on a staffer's shoulder for a photo, then pulled it back the second the shutter clicked. They performed generosity the way magicians perform miracles, misdirection, patter, applause. Ariana's kindness did not perform. She caught a busboy's elbow when he slipped on the loading dock and steadied him before anyone saw. She pushed a door open for a delivery girl whose arms were full. She thanked the AV tech who taped his cable down twice to avoid a trip hazard where she'd be walking. None of it made a story. All of it made a life. By late afternoon, the house wore the faint glaze of strain. The air conditioning hummed harder. The marble sighed. Antonella stood in the mezzanine hall and felt the draft the house made when it braced. Cece chose that moment to stage a scene. She dragged a crystal wastebasket to the top of the main staircase and held it like a prop. We recycle, she told her camera. Stewardship. The bag inside sagged with discarded tissue and a single empty bottle of a serum that cost $190. She lifted the bag and, with a flick of 2 polished fingers, let a piece of tissue float down the stairs, a paper snowflake twirling towards the foyer. Oops, she chirped, so clumsy. Leave it, Addie said, filming the paper settle. The staff need something to do. Ariana was already moving, steps quiet, face unreadable. She reached the bottom of the stairs as the tissue landed and caught it before it could splay like a surrender flag across the marble. She folded it into itself, tucked it into the bag, and carried the wastebasket to the service hall without looking up. Antonella watched the sisters watch Ariana. She saw the satisfaction on their faces sharpen when no one pushed back, the way a blade gleams when the whetstone does its job. She made a note in her mind next to the others. Mercy withheld, mockery offered, kindness quiet. Near 6, a thunderhead bruised the western sky. Forecast said clear, but weather doesn't read schedules. The estate lights clicked on in the lawn as clouds muscled over the trees. Wind lifted the edges of the tent on the south terrace with a hungry sound. Lionel checked the radar on his phone. "We'll be fine," he told the florist, a passing temper. Addie stood at the window with a glass of rosé and filmed the wind for her story. "Storm cheek," she said. "Pray for the shoes." In the staff hall, Antonella folded towels fresh from the dryer and listened to the house. She heard the whisper of weather and the louder whisper of a plan gathering speed. Tomorrow would put a shine on everything. Today had stripped some of the varnish. A small voice interrupted her inventory. "Miss Antonella?" Ariana stood in the doorway, a set of fresh linens in her arms. "Can you help me with guest 2? The duvet fights." "Duvets always fight," Antonella said, setting the towels aside. "We're older, we win." They walked together to guest 2, the room that smelled like new paint and money. Ariana set the cover on the bed. Antonella grabbed 2 corners. They shook and snapped, the fabric ballooning like a sail, then falling right where it belonged. The work was practical and holy. Beds mattered. "Thank you," Ariana said, smoothing the cover with the flat of her hand. "You're welcome." Ariana hesitated. Questions perched on her tongue and thought better of it. She chose a safe one. "Will you stay on after the gala?" "I go where I'm useful," Antonella answered. "Tomorrow will decide a few things." Ariana nodded like someone who understood contingency. "If you need a library card," she said awkwardly, "I get extras sometimes. Perk of shelving. They let me." Antonella's smile was small and real. "I might take you up on that." In the hall, voices spiked. A crash, laughter that wasn't joy. Antonella and Ariana both turned. Cece had set a ring light stand too close to a console table, crowned with a bowl of lemons. The stand fell, the bowl slid, and 3 lemons rolled across the runner like yellow marbles. Cece clapped and squealed. "Content." Ariana moved forward on instinct, scooping the lemons before they could hit the stairs. The third wobbled near the edge. Antonella tapped it with the toe of her shoe and sent it into Ariana's hand. Cece framed the save with her phone and narrated in a voice sweet enough to rot teeth. "Our little hero," Addie added, "we should put a cape on her." Ariana set the lemons back in the bowl and left the joke hanging between the sisters like a carrot she refused to chase. Dusk smudged the windows. The storm never broke, but the air stayed charged, as if the cloud had decided to sit and watch. In the study, Victor checked the lock on the liquor cabinet, then checked it again. In the foyer, Leonard rehearsed tomorrow's talking points under his breath. On the mezzanine, Antonella wiped the last smudge from a picture frame and placed her palm flat on the cool wall, as if feeling for a heartbeat. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses breathe their own weather. And weather, given time, tells the truth about structures that look permanent. The sisters retired to their rooms to lay out dresses and rehearse glances. Harper went to his office to print and initial and underline. Moshe shaped pie crusts with fingers that knew how to fold kindness into flour. Lionel walked the perimeter with Victor, 2 men who loved a house because it made work for their hands and order for their minds. Ariana sat for a minute on the small chair by her narrow window, the St. Christopher medal catching the last light. She wrote a list on a yellow pad she bought herself. Steam emerald, polish tray, refill water, check stairs for hazards, find a second for Antonella at mid-shift so she can sit. The last line she added like she wasn't sure she had a right to write it. Breathe. She folded the list, slipped it in the apron pocket she'd sewn inside her dress, and stood. There would be 10,000 small tasks tomorrow that no one would see unless they failed. She would count the completed ones the way a farmer counts rows in a field at sundown, with pride no one could eat and satisfaction no one could buy. In her tiny staff room, Antonella loosened the scarf, flexed her fingers and read the notes she'd jotted on a small, unbranded notebook. Names, habits, tells. The house had shown her the daughters of pride, each in their cut and color. She had seen the way they looked at Ariana and the way Ariana looked at work and at people who worked. She had seen generosity staged like a press release and kindness offered like a slice of peach. Tomorrow, the heir would arrive and the game would begin in earnest. Tonight, the old wisdom earned its addendum. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses breed their own weather. And weather, sooner or later, will test the roof. Antonella tied her scarf again, not as a disguise, but as a promise to herself. Stay small, see more. She turned off the light, lay down, and let the house hum its expensive lullaby through the vents. Sleep didn't come quickly. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses hide secret missions. By Wednesday dawn, Hawthorne Hall hummed like a stage, an hour before curtain cords taped, flowers drinking water, $1,000 candle smouldering on a console table simply to smell like quiet wealth. The storm had drifted out toward the sound overnight, but a charge stayed in the air, the kind that makes a person smooth their shirt without knowing why. Antonella rose before the staff clock struck 6. Years of boardrooms had taught her how to sleep on short roads and wake with a steady hand. She tied her scarf, the same faded cotton she'd bought 3 towns over so no one would recognize the print, and checked the little kit she'd carried in kitchens and conference centers all her life: emery board, bandage, mints, a pencil stub, a safety pin, a prayer. In the staff hall, Moshe Bautista slid a tray of blueberry muffins from the oven, steam lifting like good news. "First batch," he said, setting one on a saucer and pushing it her way. "For people who show up early and keep the roof from sagging." "I don't turn down gratitude," Antonella said, breaking the muffin in half. "Real blueberries, not the cheap syrup. How many guests?" 30 in the study, 20 more roving for photos. "PR wants intimacy. Intimacy is what rich people call a party that still needs valet." "Spoken like a man who's catered a trustee luncheon," Antonella said, pocketing the compliment with the crumbs. She spent the next hour laying down runners along the corridor. Ariana would travel most, testing each for a lip that could catch a heel. Victor Duffy checked cameras and rerouted a cable that would have hidden under the staircase shadow at noon, but be a tripwire in the 4 o'clock glare. Lionel Lozano walked the route like a conductor before a concert, glance at the sconces, hand on the banister, a mental note where a careless elbow might invite a lawsuit. Upstairs, Cecilia Wilkinson perfected her makeup in a mirror, ringed with lights set to credibility. Addison Sparks paced her closet in bare feet, trying on 3 pairs of emerald earrings to match the dress, steamed without a single puckered seam. She practiced the handshake of a woman who wished you well and remembered your wife's name. Antonella wheeled her cart toward the study and past the open door of Harper Hawkins's private office. She would have kept rolling, no maid loiters where ego breeds, but a single phrase stopped her, the way a stop sign does on a back road. "You know too well, alignment optics." Leonard Martinez's voice floated from the doorway, smooth as lacquer. "We position this as legacy, joining legacy. Hawkins Properties plus Wallace Capital. Old Greenwich meets new tech. Clean lines, sustainable materials, public-private partnerships, and a human interest note if possible." "Define human interest," Harper said. He sounded like a man who liked the words on his own stationery. "A photo with the right person," Lane replied. "A shot that makes subscribers see a family, not a transaction." Harper huffed, considering. "My girls photograph well." "They do," Leonard said, kindness like ice. "But a fresh element reads as authentic. Drake has a reputation, discipline, control. If he appears open to a personal future, it softens the edge." "Softens the edge," Harper repeated, smiling at his own reflection in the glass. "You mean a clean girl?" "I mean a sincere face," Leonard said, "preferably in a story the town already loves." Antonella stood out of sight, one hand on the cart handle, the other keeping her heartbeat from climbing into her throat. She'd flown to Zurich once to tell a board full of men 30 years her junior that their projections were fantasy. She'd watched a minister pray that a ribbon would cut evenly. This was why she had come to mop other people's floors. Harper lowered his voice, the words still carried. "We've been cultivating someone, Ariana. She photographs like a hymn. Works hard, doesn't complain. People love redemption. Found her at a church charity drive. We gave her a room because that's what people like us do." "And how does Drake feel?" Leonard asked. "Drake will do what looks right for the enterprise," Harper said. "If the chemistry isn't there, we can stage a respectful distance. The town reads what we hand it." Antonella saw 100 little scenes in a single blink. A girl with a patched quilt, a St. Christopher medal, a band-aid on her thumb from catching a perfume bottle that didn't belong to her, her hands steady on a tray no one else wanted to carry. Not a prop, a person. She slid the cart forward. The hallway widened into the public world. She thinned herself to the edges again. Victor appeared, clipboard in hand, eyebrows drawing together like he sensed the static. "You good?" "Always," Antonella said, voice even. She moved on with the quiet precision that comes from knowing your purpose down to the bone. She had not come to block anything. She had come to see who chose kindness when it didn't trend. If a mother wanted a son to be loved for something beyond a portfolio, she had to see if the woman in the camera's blind spot could be trusted with a heart and a home. Ariana Fletcher arrived in the kitchen at 8 sharp, washed her hands, and tied on a clean apron she'd ironed herself the night before. She filled water glasses with a pour steady enough to make a bartender nod. Moshi passed her a roll wrapped in a paper napkin. "Breakfast." She smiled, tucked it into her pocket, then used both hands to lift the silver tray, testing its balance the way a pianist tests a new bench. Antonella fell into step beside her without fanfare. 2 people carrying weight so it didn't show. They set the glasses in the study while Leonard directed the photographer to test angles. "No glare off the glass," he murmured. "We sell polish, not mirror." Harper strode in as if the room had been waiting for him since limestone cooled into blocks. He wore a navy suit the color of boardroom carpet and a tie that whispered old money. He checked the water, checked the pens, checked the chairs. "Where are my daughters?" he asked. "Powder rooms," Lennell said. "Sparkles take time. Make them look useful," Harper replied. "Noted," Leonard said, crossing something invisible off a list no one else had seen. At 10 to 10, the house altered, as if a barometer in its timbered ribs felt a pressure drop. Victor's radio murmured the magic words, "Gate open." Drake Wallace didn't like being announced, but houses this size did it anyway. He stepped through the front door at 9:58 with the quick, contained stride of a man who never tripped over his own arrival. 32, 6 feet even, sand-colored hair neat enough to calm investors, a watch that belonged on a board chair's wrist and looked wrong on a boy. He wore a charcoal suit with the shoulders softened and an expression that said he tolerated staged moments because they funded real work. "Mr. Wallace," Victor said, not bowing, exactly, but nodding the way one professional recognizes another. "Victor," Drake returned, handshake firm, eyes taking in the foyer, the line of sight to the study, the path a pair of heels would walk. He smelled the faint lemon, the flowers, the applause that hadn't started yet. He also saw the old maid by the side door, holding a tray of fresh water like it was Sunday's communion in a church whose windows still opened. He glanced once, courteous, then looked back, a fraction, as if something familiar tugged. Antonella kept her eyes low. A mother's hands have a tremor their sons can feel even in a storm. Hers were steady. The scarf did its small job. His gaze moved on. "Welcome," Harper boomed from the study doorway. "Let's make history." "Let's make a good building first," Drake said. The line wasn't for the cameras, it was for his own ethics. The sisters descended together like the last chorus number at a Broadway show, Cecilia in pearl, Addison in emerald. They timed their hellos for the click of the camera. "Mr. Wallace," Cece said, extending a hand as if offering a die to a gambler. "We're honored." "Nice to finally meet you in person," Addie added, smile set to future. "Good morning," Drake said, voice polite but not hungry. His eyes traveled the room and found, as if by accident, a woman crossing the threshold with a tray balanced on her palm. Not the maid. The other one. The one whose eyebrows knit when she focused, whose mouth relaxed when she didn't expect anyone to be watching. Ariana. She paused in the doorway because Cece had stepped into her path without seeing her, the way people do when their lives are the only lane on the road. Ariana adjusted, sidestepped, and made the water land where it needed to, within reach of the men who would decide where cranes would swing and where sunlight would fall across a lobby. "Thank you," Drake said, meeting her eyes with a simple courtesy that made Leonard's camera operator adjust his lens. Ariana nodded. No flutter, no planted line. "You're welcome," she said, voice like morning. Cece saw the exchange and filled the space with laughter. "Isn't she a marvel?" She cooed to Drake. "She keeps us sane. Sanity is undervalued," Drake said, and turned back to Harper before anyone could stage a preamble. The meeting began, contracts like a wedding cake, tiered and precise, pens heavy, the ink an expensive blue the camera could see from across the room. Leonard arranged chairs and posture. Victor kept an eye on the hallway, where press would later press their bodies into angles that made home look like hospitality. Antonella moved where a good maid moves, behind edges, beside shadows, arriving exactly when the glass had 2 sips left. She heard figures, $620 million, 24 months, $2 million earmarked for a greenway along the Mill River. She filed them away out of habit, the way I'm "Ah," Harper said, as if that explained 1,000 things. "We'll have to lure her with food." "Good luck," Drake replied. "She's immune to veneer." The sisters pounced where PR had wanted human interest. "We're hosting a charity reading at the library tomorrow," Cece said. "Children's wing, early literacy. Join us. We'd love to do something grounded together." "Send the details," Drake said, polite but unmoved. "If I'm in town." Addie decided the moment needed a nudge. She reached for Ariana's elbow the way one picks up a spare prop. "Ari reads for the kids," she told Drake. "She does the voices." Ariana flushed, not the girlish kind the sisters practiced, but the heat of a person pulled into a frame without consent. "I just like stories," she said. "They help little ones sit still." "Stories are building materials," Drake said. "They shape how people carry weight." Addie blinked. The line didn't fit on her caption template. "That's poetic." "It's practical," Drake said. Leon checked his watch and clapped his hands once, the way PR men do when they want a room to move. "We have B-roll on the South Terrace. Mr. Wallach one shot with the renderings." "Fine," Drake said. The crowd spilled into the hall. Cece stepped in front of Ariana again. No malice, just habit. Ariana eased back to let the important people pass. Antonella stayed inside the doorway, half hidden, heart hammering like a small animal that had learned how to be quiet, even when it needed to run. Victor caught sight of the old maid's grip on the tray and narrowed his eyes. "You okay?" She exhaled. "I'm fine. Take 5, he said, not unkind. "You've earned 3. She set the tray down on a sideboard, flexed her fingers, and listened to the house breathe. The deal had landed, the photos had gleamed, the town would read the morning coverage and nod. She had something else to read, tiny texts written in the margins. In the pantry, Ariana washed the last glass by hand because the dishwasher was full of silver utensils that needed the gentler cycle. Antonella offered a towel. They dried in a quiet rhythm, the sink a metronome. At the 3rd glass, Ariana spoke, not looking up. "They talk about me like I'm a ribbon." Antonella folded the towel over her palm. "Have you been asked what you want?" Ariana set the glass upside down on the mat. "What I want fits in small rooms, a steady job, a library card that doesn't get revoked when budgets get slashed, a kitchen where the light falls right in the afternoon, work that doesn't make someone else's cruelty look like charm. And if someone asked you to stand in a photo that changed the shape of your life." Ariana rested her hands on the edge of the sink. "Photos lie," she said softly. "The truth comes out in the walking." Antonella felt the proverb move through her like old music. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses breathe their own weather, but walking writes the forecast. The photographer shook hands. Leonard confirmed embargo times. Harper clasped Drake again and sent him off with a case of the house red and 3 talking points for the drive. The front door opened on light and closed on the echo of the word legacy. Drake paused in the foyer, looked down the staff corridor like he'd heard something he wasn't supposed to hear. Metal on tile, a muffled laugh, the living world behind the scenes. He turned his head, just enough to catch the sight of the old maid at the very end of the hall, wiping her hands on a towel. For a second the look was a boy's, not a CEO's. A prickle at the back of the neck that says home is near, even if you can't draw the map. "Thank you," he called down the hall, not loud, not staged. "All of you." Staff looked up. It was the kind of sentence that doesn't pay a bill but pays something else if said without elbows and caps. Antonella nodded once, gravity in the small movement. He left. The house exhaled so hard the drapes shivered. Afternoon slid into its errands. The sisters replayed footage and edited clips. Harper fielded congratulatory texts from names that lived in donor walls. Lionel reset the study for the next meeting. Victor rechecked the cameras in the East Wing and made a note to replace the one with a lag. Antonella found 10 quiet minutes in the staff lounge. She took out her small notebook, the cheap kind from the Walgreens on West Putnam Avenue, because expensive notebooks make people too precious about what gets written. She listed what the cameras had missed. Ariana steadied a vase with a maid, not for the applause, but to prevent a mess someone else would clean. Drake read the room and protected the slow parts, the human parts. "Take your time," not an instruction, a permission. Harper loved the shape of a headline and the sound of his name in a sentence with a verb like joined or built or pledged. The PR man smelled angles the way a chef smells burners left on. The sisters, Cecilia and Addison, could sell a frame. Frames break. She closed the notebook and sat with the thing no ledger captures, a mother's measure. Could Ariana carry a life with a man whose days were built like crane schedules and whose nights often ended with blueprints spread across a counter? Could she forgive the ruthless parts without letting them nest? Would she tell the truth when truth cost? Could she accept joy without crediting it to a benefactor in a suit? Antonella had come to spy. The work had turned into something else. Witness, a test, yes, but not a trap, a seeing. The house wasn't done with humiliation yet. At 3, Addison staged an unboxing on the mezzanine landing. Custom heels, emerald satin, $1,200, a brand that sent a handwritten note because that's what luxury does for people who sell it free to the world. She wanted the shot with the light behind her to halo the shoe. She wanted the caption to say, "Designed to move the future." She set the box too near the edge of the marble step. The lid slid, the shoes tipped, gravity wrote a new caption. One shoe tumbled down the stairs, stopped on the runner, and teetered. Ariana, 3 doors down with a dust cloth, saw the motion, set the cloth aside, and hurried. Antonella saw it at the same time and moved from the other end. They arrived together. Ariana reached first, fingertips on satin, balance held. Antonella planted her foot at the base of the step to block the second shoe from doing what expensive things do when the floor tilts. Addie gasped and then laughed, relief twisting the sound. "Content," she breathed, and lifted her phone before the thanks. "Try gratitude first," Moshi called from below, not looking up from his tray of crostini. Addie colored like a girl caught stealing jam. "Thank you," she said to Ariana, and the thank you half landed. She looked at Antonella, hesitated, then added, "And you." "Welcome," Antonella said, "because grace costs what it costs, and you pay it or you don't." Dusk pulled itself thin over the hedges by the time the last vendor van left. The house went quiet in the way houses do when the whole idea of them has been proven for the day. The sisters retreated to drafts and edits. Harper poured a splash of the house red and toured the empty study like a king at the end of a peaceful war. Victor logged his end-of-day notes. Lionel locked the side door by habit and then unlocked it again because staff still needed to get out with dignity. In her narrow room, Ariana sat on the little chair and unpinned her hair. The St. Christopher medal lay on the nightstand beside a library receipt stamped Greenwich Library, Cole Auditorium, Duoc 28. She unfolded a small paper sheet, tucked into her apron, a line she'd written on her break after the meeting. "Kindness counts faster than cameras." She smiled at the clumsy words, folded them back into a square, and slid them under the saint. Antonella ate the second half of her morning muffin with a cup of tea she made herself because some comforts do not require permission. She thought of her son at 8, solemn eyes, asking why the world feels heavy sometimes. She'd told him then, "We share the weight, that's all." She still believed it. Tomorrow, the town would read about a partnership that promised jobs and green space and a tax abatement sweet enough to make a councilman swear it wasn't. Mothers would point to the photo in the paper and say, "He looks like someone who knows where he's going." Daughters would screenshot the sisters' dresses. Somewhere, a girl in a library would see Ariana in the background of a clip and recognize the way a hand steadies a vase. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Dark houses breed their own weather. And sometimes, in the middle of someone else's forecast, a mother takes a mop, ties a scarf, and walks straight into the front that will decide her son's future. She lay down without untucking the top sheet. Sleep came easier tonight. Purpose had been tested and found sound. The mission had shifted from find the angle to measure the heart. At dawn, the house would shine again. At noon, gossip would hum. At dusk, something else might crack. The kind of crack that lets light travel where it hasn't been. For now, the mansion breathed evenly through its vents. In a little room with a patched quilt, a young woman drifted off with a list for tomorrow in her pocket. In a staff bed no one thought about twice, a wealthy mother disguised as a maid closed her eyes and let the old saying carry her like a lullaby. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but a tested heart needs no hedge at all. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but our hearts hide deeper. By Thursday morning, Hawthorne Hall smelled of lilies and nerves. The staff had been polishing since dawn, and the air buzzed with the energy of people trying too hard to look effortless. Harper Hawkins was in the study, rehearsing lines for the press. His daughters rehearsed smiles for the mirror. Antonella Shelton, still the new maid to everyone but herself, moved like a ghost in broad daylight, quietly folding towels and watching a moral storm build in the marble halls. The partnership deal was done, the photos printed, the town's gossip engines roaring, but Antonella hadn't come for contracts. She had come for character, and now, as her son's voice still lingered in the walls of this house, she wanted proof. Ariana Fletcher was already awake when the first light hit her window. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, tying the same white apron she'd washed the night before. Outside, the gardeners hummed old tunes as they trimmed the hedges, unaware of the silent war between vanity and virtue being fought behind the mansion's glass. Antonella watched from the staff kitchen as Ariana filled a tray with breakfast for the girls upstairs. Greek yogurt, fruit sliced thin, honey drizzled like art. She carried it carefully, balanced steady. From the hallway, Cecilia Wilkinson's voice sliced through the quiet. "Ariana, where's the almond milk? I can't do dairy before a camera day." Ariana turned. "It's on the cart, Miss Cecilia." Cece looked her up and down, then sighed dramatically. "You really should dress better when guests are here. You look like service." Antonella's hands clenched around the cloth she was wringing. But Ariana's answer was soft and disarming. "That's because I am service, ma'am. It keeps me useful." Cece blinked. For a split second she didn't have a comeback. Then she laughed, the sound sharp as crystal. "Careful, sweetheart. People who stay useful never leave." Ariana smiled, small, polite, almost tender. "Then I'll stay until kindness goes out of style." Antonella's heart stirred. She recognized strength when it wore humility as armor. At noon, the house turned into a hive. The charity luncheon Harper had promised to host was underway, a gathering of donors, local politicians and curious neighbors who wanted to breathe the same air as success. Lionel Lozano, clipboard in hand, whispered orders. Smiles in the foyer, sincerity in the dining room, and for heaven's sake, someone keep the Wi-Fi steady. Cecilia and Addison floated through the hall like designer angels, rehearsed laughter trailing behind them. Cameras flashed, forks clinked, and speeches dripped with sugar. Antonella stayed to the side with the other staff, her mop bucket nearby. She listened, noting every false word wrapped in charity. Then she noticed something else. Ariana, kneeling beside an elderly guest whose glass of wine had tipped over. She wasn't performing. No one was watching. She used her own handkerchief to dry the woman's lap, apologizing for a mess she didn't cause. The guest smiled through embarrassment. "You remind me of my daughter," she said softly. Ariana smiled back. "Then she must be lovely." Antonella's throat tightened. This girl had the kind of grace that couldn't be taught by wealth. It came from the kind of hunger that polishes the soul. Cece saw it too, but in her eyes, grace was competition. She leaned toward Addison, whispering, "Watch this saint trip." By sunset the guests had gone, leaving the house filled with clinking dishes and tired smiles. The staff worked in shifts to reset the rooms. Ariana had been cleaning since dawn, yet she still hummed a tune, an old melody that made even the walls seem gentler. Antonella joined her with a mop and pail, pretending to scrub the hallway. The marble floor gleamed like a mirror. That was when Mimi, Harper's youngest, appeared at the top of the staircase, holding a phone in her hand, recording. "Hey, Grandma Mop," she called. "Mr. Spot." Addison joined her, sipping iced tea. "I bet she polishes the floor with her tears." Antonella kept her head down. She knew their kind. Every insult was a pebble thrown to see who would bleed first. But when Mimi kicked the bucket over, water spreading across the hall like spilled guilt, Ariana rushed forward. "Stop!" The floor, too late. Antonella's shoe slipped. The world tilted. She fell hard on her side, pain bursting through her hip. The bucket clattered. Laughter exploded. "Did you get that?" Cecilia said between giggles. "We'll call it the maid and the mop." Addison's phone flashed. Mimi doubled over, howling. Antonella lay there, the chill of the marble crawling up her bones. Her pride ached more than her body. Then Ariana's voice rose, clear, fierce, shaking. "Enough." The laughter died mid-breath. She knelt beside Antonella, hands trembling as she dabbed at the old woman's forehead with her apron. "You're hurt. Don't move." Cecilia rolled her eyes. "It's just a maid. Why risk your dress?" Ariana stood slowly. "Because no one deserves to be laughed at when they're down." The sisters shifted uneasily, their cruelty suddenly too loud in the polished hall. Antonella whispered, "Leave it, my dear." But Ariana wouldn't. No, ma'am, not this time. She faced the Hawkins daughters. You talk about kindness for cameras. Maybe try it for people. Silence fell so heavy, even the house seemed to hold its breath. Addison fumbled for words. How dare you speak to us? Someone had to, Ariana said simply. She turned back to help Antonella up, her arm gentle but firm. Antonella's eyes watered, not from pain, but from clarity. Hours later, the mansion slept under a thin silver moon. In the tiny staff quarters, Antonella sat on her bed, knees wrapped in a towel soaked in Epsom salt. The ache reminded her she was still flesh, still fallible, still testing herself as much as them. Ariana knocked softly. Can I come in? Antonella smiled. Only if you brought good news. The young woman entered, holding a small cup of warm tea. Moshe made chamomile, said it helps pain and pride. Antonella chuckled. He's right on both. They sat together in the dim light. You didn't have to defend me, Antonella said quietly. I didn't think, Ariana replied. I just couldn't watch them laugh. Antonella studied her face. You have a heart that doesn't count cost. Ariana shook her head. Hearts that count too much forget how to give. Antonella reached across the table and took her hand. You remind me of someone I raised once. He had that same look, like he could fix the world if the world just gave him time. Your son? Antonella's voice softened. Yes. What's he like? Kind, she said, eyes misting, but tired of people pretending. Ariana smiled faintly. Then I hope he finds someone who reminds him what's real. Antonella's fingers tightened around hers. So do I, child. They sat in silence, two women from different worlds, bound by something truer than status. Outside, the mansion glittered in the moonlight, proud, perfect, and blind to its own cracks. Inside, Antonella knew the test was over. Tomorrow she would reveal the truth. But tonight she let herself cry, quiet tears that smelled of gratitude and purpose. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but kindness, real kindness, blooms even in the shade. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but even darker hearts hide behind polished smiles. By Friday morning, the air inside Hawthorne Hall was brittle. The gala lights were down, the guests gone, and the laughter that once filled the corridors had curdled into whispers. The sisters, Cecilia Wilkinson and Addison Sparks, hadn't forgotten the sting of being called out by a servant. Humiliation burns longer than perfume lingers. Antonella Shelton, still in her plain scarf and borrowed shoes, sensed the shift before sunrise. She'd seen it before in boardrooms and battlefields of the wealthy. Wounded pride doesn't heal, it hunts. At 8 o'clock, Cecilia's scream echoed through the marble hall like a siren. My bracelet, my Cartier bracelet is gone. The staff froze mid-motion. Moshe stopped slicing fruit. Lionel Lozano looked up from his clipboard. Antonella, polishing silver, turned her head slowly. Cecilia stormed down the stairs in a silk robe, the color of champagne and fury. It was right on my dresser last night, limited edition, rose gold, $16,000, and now it's gone. Addison followed, arms crossed, smirking. We all knew this would happen. Too many hands around here. Victor Duffy, ever the calm security chief, said quietly, no one leaves the house until I've searched every room. Search everyone. Cecilia snapped, voice shaking with righteous venom. Every bag, every locker, every pocket. Ariana Fletcher emerged from the hallway, holding a folded tablecloth. Her face was pale. Miss Cecilia, maybe you just misplaced it. I can help you look. Cecilia rounded on her. Don't patronize me, charity girl. You think I didn't notice how you stared at it yesterday? Ariana blinked, stunned. I didn't. Of course you didn't, Addison said sweetly. Poor people never steal, they just find things, right? Laughter flickered from her like a blade catching light. Antonella stepped forward, voice low. No one should be accused without proof. Cecilia sneered. Proof? Please, you think we don't know your type? You all defend each other. Victor sighed. Let's keep this orderly. He gestured for Lionel to open the staff quarters. They began the search. Drawers overturned, closets opened. Even the pantry inspected. Ariana stood still, hands folded, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Finally, Addison lifted a pale blue bucket from beside Ariana's bed. Her eyes widened in mock shock. Found it. The bracelet glimmered at the top of a folded wrapper, catching sunlight like a tiny curse. Everyone gasped. Cecilia clutched her chest. I knew it. Ariana's voice broke. That's not. I didn't. Antonella stepped closer. Wait, that bracelet's dry. Cecilia frowned. So, you washed clothes this morning, didn't you, Ariana? Yes, she whispered. Antonella nodded. If that bracelet was sitting in your wet bucket, it wouldn't be clean. No dust, no soap residue, no dampness. It's been placed. Addison's jaw tightened. Are you calling me a liar? I'm calling you observant, Antonella said softly. Too observant for a frame this clumsy. Before the tension could thicken further, the front doors opened. Drake Wallace, Antonella's son, walked in, flanked by his assistant Leonard Martinez. His expression was calm, but his eyes sharpened at the scene before him. What's going on? Cecilia rushed forward, tears suddenly blooming like theatre roses. Drake, thank God you're here. One of the maids stole my bracelet. He looked past her. Who? Addison pointed, triumphant. Her. Ariana stood near the staircase, clutching the hem of her apron, her face pale but proud. Drake's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary. What proof do you have? The bracelet was found in her bucket, Cecilia said. Victor saw it. Victor hesitated. I saw it there, yes, but I didn't see her put it there. Drake walked forward, picked up the bracelet with a handkerchief, and studied it. He turned it under the light like a jeweler inspecting a forgery. No fingerprints, no moisture, no lint. It was planted. Drake's eyes were cool and steady. Yes, and whoever did it forgot that truth leaves fingerprints, even when guilt tries to hide them. He turned to Ariana. Did you touch it? No, sir, she said softly, eyes glistening, but thank you for asking. Drake nodded. Then I believe you. The words fell like thunder in the hall. Cecilia went crimson. You're taking her side. I'm taking the side of logic, Drake said, and decency. Addison tried to laugh it off. Come on, Drake, you don't even know her. He glanced at Antonella, still standing quietly in her scarf. You learn enough about people by how they treat someone who can't answer back. Even Harper Hawkins, who had emerged from his study mid-commotion, said nothing. His public smile faltered for the first time that week. Finally, he cleared his throat. Return the bracelet to the safe, and this discussion ends now. The sisters retreated to Cecilia's room, slamming the door behind them. The sound of whispered outrage bled through the walls. In the staff kitchen, Antonella poured Ariana a glass of water. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. You handled yourself with grace. Ariana shook her head. I wanted to shout, but what would it change? Sometimes silence screams louder than pride, Antonella said. Moshe poked his head through the doorway. Dinner's ready. Chicken pot pie. Comfort food for truth-tellers. Ariana smiled weakly. Thank you, Moshe. Antonella waited until the kitchen was empty before she spoke again. Drake Wallace, he's not like them. Ariana blinked. You know him? Antonella looked down. In a way, yes. I knew his mother. She believed in testing people. Quietly, Ariana tilted her head, curiosity flickering. Testing. Sometimes wealth blinds you, Antonella said softly, so you learn to look through other people's eyes. Ariana smiled gently. Then I hope she'd be proud of him today. Antonella's throat tightened. She would be. The mansion was calm again, at least on the surface, but under the marble and glass, new truths shifted like tectonic plates. Cecilia and Addison's laughter no longer filled the hallways. It had curdled into whispers and sidelong glances. Harper stayed late in his study, pretending to work while replaying the embarrassment of losing control in his own house. And Ariana? She sat by her small window, the St. Christopher medal cool against her palm, whispering a prayer not for justice, but for peace. In her room, Antonella removed her scarf for the first time in 5 days. Her hair fell in silver waves, and the disguise of humility slipped away, leaving only the raw truth of motherhood. She looked into the cracked mirror, her reflection half maid, half matriarch. Her son had shown compassion, the girl had shown integrity, and the family that once stood untouchable now trembled under its own reflection. She smiled faintly and whispered into the night, "The test is nearly done." Bright hedges hide dark houses, but hearts tested by cruelty reveal their light, even if that light starts in the dark. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but truth grows like ivy. It finds the cracks and climbs out, no matter how high the walls. By Saturday morning, Hawthorne Hall no longer hummed with wealth, it buzzed with unease. The maids spoke in whispers. The sisters avoided the staff corridor. Even Harper Hawkins, that titan of control, looked like a man who'd glimpsed a ghost and wasn't sure if it came for him or his conscience. Antonella Shelton could feel it. The house was softening. The pride that once strutted through those marble corridors now walked on tiptoe, afraid of its own echo. And though she still wore her scarf, something inside her was already shedding disguise. Cecilia Wilkinson sat at the breakfast table, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. "They're dragging me on social media," she hissed to her sister. "Bracelet Gate is trending. Someone leaked the story." Addison looked up, lips tight. "Who'd care about your bracelet?" Cecilia turned her screen around. "Everyone. Some staffer must have talked. They're saying I framed a worker. Look at this comment. Money can't buy class." Harper entered just as the argument peaked. His suit was pressed, but his posture sagged. "Enough," he said. "You embarrassed this family once. Don't make it twice." Cecilia blinked. "You believe those rumors?" Addison folded her arms. "So we're the villains now?" He didn't answer. He just turned toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. It was the first time his daughters had ever seen their father look powerless. At noon sharp, Drake Wallace returned to the estate, unannounced this time. He'd spent the previous night reading emails from his PR team and thinking about one particular sentence. Ariana had said, "Photos lie. The truth comes out in the walking." He wasn't sure why that line stuck, but it played in his mind like a melody that won't fade. Victor Duffy met him at the door. "Mr. Wallace, we weren't expecting you." Drake smiled faintly. "That's the point." He walked straight to the study where Harper stood with a whiskey glass he didn't drink from. "Mind if I sit?" "Of course," Harper said, forcing a smile. "To what do I owe this?" Drake cut him off. "I came for transparency. I'm tired of veiled rooms and rehearsed apologies. And I think you are too." Harper's jaw twitched. "If this is about my daughters, it's about character," Drake said. "The deal stands, but I won't tie my company to a brand that bullies the people who make its image look good." "You're lecturing me in my own house?" "No," Drake said softly. "I'm reminding you that a legacy built on pretense eventually cracks, and I've seen enough cracks in this marble to know what's underneath." Harper didn't respond, but when he glanced toward the window, he caught sight of something that froze him. Antonella, polishing the rail on the veranda, her scarf loose, her posture strangely familiar, his brow furrowed. "That maid, she looks—" Drake followed his gaze, his lips quirked upward, almost imperceptibly. "She does, doesn't she?" An hour later, the staff were called into the main hall. Harper Hawkins stood before them, flanked by his daughters, trying to restore a sense of order. "There has been an unfortunate misunderstanding this week," he began, voice booming. "We value our staff deeply." Antonella entered quietly, mop in hand. "Do you?" Heads turned. Cecilia gasped. "She's interrupting." Antonella smiled faintly. "Oh, I'm just cleaning. But since we're addressing misunderstandings, perhaps we should clean those up too." Drake stepped forward, eyes locked on his mother, though no one else yet realized who she was. "Let her speak." Harper frowned. "Excuse me?" Drake's tone was calm but firm. "Please, let her speak." Antonella lowered her mop, unknotted her scarf, and let it fall. Her silver hair glinted in the afternoon light, like truth itself. Cecilia's hand flew to her mouth. Addison's jaw dropped. Harper stumbled half a step back. "You, Antonella Shelton," she said, standing tall, "chairwoman of Shelton and Wallace Holdings, majority investor in your last 3 projects, Mr. Hawkins, and Drake Wallace's mother." Gasps rippled through the hall like wind through reeds. Cecilia turned pale. You were mopping our floors?" "Yes," Antonella said calmly, "because I wanted to see how your family treated the people beneath its chandelier. I wanted to know if this partnership was worth my son's name." Silence, heavy, humid, holy silence. Ariana stepped out from the back, eyes wide, realization dawning. You're his mother?" Antonella's expression softened. "Yes, dear, and you're the only person in this house who treated me like one." Cecilia's voice shook. "You tricked us." "No," Antonella said. "You revealed yourselves. I simply gave you the chance." Harper tried to recover. "Now wait, this is all very dramatic, but—" "No," Drake interrupted, his voice cutting clean through the air. "It's honest." He walked to his mother's side. "She's right. Character doesn't show at galas. It shows in kitchens, in how you treat a stranger holding a mop." Addison's eyes brimmed with tears, the kind born of humiliation, not repentance. "We didn't mean. You meant every word," Antonella said, not cruelly but with a sorrow that filled the room. "And now you have to live with the echo." By dusk, the mansion was quiet again. Cecilia had locked herself in her room. Addison fled to a spa. Harper sat in his study, staring at his reflection in the decanter glass, wondering how one woman managed to strip his empire bare with nothing but a mop and a mission. In the garden, under a magnolia tree that smelled like forgiveness, Drake and Ariana stood alone. "I should have guessed," she said, half laughing, half in awe. "You looked at her like someone remembering." "I was," he said. "She used to tell me she'd test the world to see who still deserved kindness." "And?" Ariana asked softly. Drake's eyes warmed. "You passed." Ariana's cheeks flushed. "I wasn't trying to. That's why it mattered." They stood there, the hush between them saying what words couldn't, that decency still mattered, that truth could walk quietly and still win. Inside, Antonella stood at the same staircase where she'd once fallen. The marble was still cold, but it didn't sting anymore. She smiled faintly. "Test complete," she whispered. Then, with her scarf folded neatly over her arm, she walked out into the night. A mother, a witness, a storm disguised as grace. The newspapers called it the housekeeper heist that never was. The internet called it justice. Harper Hawkins released a formal apology. Cecilia shut down her influencer channel. Addison went silent online for the first time in years. And Ariana, she accepted a position at Wallace Capital, not out of pity but merit. Her first day, she found a handwritten note on her desk. "Integrity isn't quiet because it's weak. It's quiet because it doesn't need to shout." Antonella Scelto. She smiled, tucked the note into her planner, and looked out the window at a skyline bathed in gold. Bright hedges hide dark houses. Yes, but the truth once planted grows wild. The same light that exposes pride also reveals grace. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but under sunlight, even marble learns to blush. It had been exactly 3 weeks since Antonella Shelton, mother of billionaire Drake Wallace, removed her scarf and broke the Hawkins family's illusion. In that short time, the once untouchable estate of Hawthorne Hall had turned from a symbol of status into a parable the whole city whispered about. Yet, Antonella wasn't finished. Tests revealed truth but redemption that takes invitation, so she planned one final gathering. A gala, not for business or publicity, but for reckoning. White envelopes, sealed with gold wax and embossed with the Shelton and Wallace crest, arrived on doorsteps across the city. Inside each was a single line in Antonella's graceful handwriting, to celebrate second chances and the people who earned them. Harper Hawkins almost tore his when he opened it. "Second chances," he muttered. "She's mocking me." His daughter Cecilia, pale from sleepless nights and online shame, held hers carefully. "Dad, we should go." Addison scoffed. "After what she did to us." Cecilia's eyes glistened. "After what we did to ourselves." The Hilton Grand Ballroom glittered that evening like a cathedral of light. Crystal chandeliers reflected gold onto white lilies. Violins whispered beneath the hum of conversation. The city's elite gathered, unsure whether to expect punishment or praise. At the center of it all, Antonella stood poised in an ivory gown. She wasn't the maid anymore, but she hadn't forgotten how to hold herself like one, calm, measured, and untouchable in humility. Drake Wallace stood beside her, crisp in a charcoal tuxedo, and next to him, quietly radiant in a simple silver dress, was Ariana Fletcher. No makeup, no diamonds, just the peace of someone who no longer had to pretend. As guests approached, Antonella greeted each with a smile that disarmed pride and restored decency. "Mr. Hawkins," she said warmly when Harper arrived, his daughters in tow. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Harper cleared his throat. "Neither was I." Cecilia lowered her gaze. "Mrs. Shelton." Antonella raised a hand. "Not here for apologies, dear. Tonight is for acknowledgement. What you do after will tell the rest." The words landed softer than judgment, but deeper than forgiveness. When the clock struck 8, Antonella took the stage. Cameras flashed, murmurs hushed. "3 weeks ago," she began, voice steady as silk, "I entered a house that glittered brighter than truth. I walked its halls unseen, listening to how power speaks when it believes it's alone. And I learned something every empire forgets. Wealth doesn't reveal character, it exposes it. The room held its breath. She turned toward the Hawkins family. I don't repeat humiliation, I restore perspective, because none of us are above compassion. We all fall, but some of us still kneel to help someone up. Drake's eyes found Ariana's. The memory of her kneeling beside his mother, mop water around them, rose like a quiet prayer fulfilled. Antonella continued, "This event isn't about who failed me, it's about who reminded me why kindness is still the rarest currency. So tonight, I honor those who spend it freely." She gestured toward Ariana, Miss Ariana Fletcher. The crowd applauded, tentative at first, then warm and real. Ariana stepped up, heart pounding. "I didn't do anything special," she said softly. Antonella smiled. Later, as violins played Moon River and champagne glasses caught the light, the Hawkins family stood by the balcony. Cecilia whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry." Harper sighed, shoulders heavy. "So am I." Addison looked out at the skyline, voice trembling. "It's strange. We had everything, money, beauty, influence, and still, we were poor." Harper placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe this is how we start over." As the orchestra swelled, Drake approached Ariana. "Dance with me." She hesitated. "You sure? Everyone's watching." He smiled. "Then let's give them something true to see." He took her hand. They moved across the floor. No choreography, no spectacle, just two souls meeting where pretense had died. Antonella watched from a distance, a tear sliding down her cheek. Not of sorrow, of fulfillment. Her son had found what wealth could never buy. At the end of the evening, as guests departed, Antonella returned to the microphone. "Before we go, let me leave you with something my late husband used to say. When a man builds walls around his house, he keeps out thieves. When a man builds walls around his heart, he keeps out grace. And grace," she added softly, "was all I came to test." Weeks later, Hawthorne Hall reopened, not as a mansion of marble, but as the Fletcher Foundation for Ethics and Education, funded jointly by Harper Hawkins and Drake Wallace. Its mission, to teach underprivileged students that dignity doesn't depend on dollars. Cecilia volunteered weekly, Addison managed logistics, and Harper at long last learned to sweep his own floors. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the grand atrium, Ariana found Antonella standing by a window. "I still don't understand," Ariana said softly. "Why me?" Antonella smiled. "Because, my dear, when everyone else looked at a mop, you saw a person holding it." Ariana's eyes shimmered. "And you changed my life." "No," Antonella whispered. "You reminded me that goodness still exists." Outside, the magnolias swayed in the breeze. Inside, two women stood in quiet victory. Bright hedges hide dark houses, but hearts that choose humility become mansions of light.